Welcome everyone to this town hall. We greatly appreciate it, and we're going to get started right now.
Great. Hi, I'm Jan Box-Steffensmeier. I'm at Ohio State University and currently serving as the American Political Science Association's president. I'm excited to be partnering with Professor Franklin, who's serving as a president of this distinguished group that he's brought together here. And I'm excited to be here this afternoon for this panel. I want to offer my gratitude to the people who've worked on this town hall. Kalila Brown Dean at Quinnipiac University, whose Disrupted podcast started yesterday. It was wonderful. It premiered yesterday, so also check that out on Connecticut Public Radio. Also want to thank Pearl Ford Dow at Emory University, Kim Mealy, APSA Senior Director for Diversity and Inclusion Programs, Wendy Smooth at Ohio State University, Cherie Wallace at the University of Louisville, and Tiffany Willoughby-Herard at the University of California, Irvine, who all helped put this together, and graphic designers Alexis Harris and Karima Scott and Jasmine Scott. I want to talk just briefly about a couple things that are going on at the American Political Science Association. First, the 2020 meeting call is out. And we also have a task force and resulting edited volume that will go together that's focusing on promoting pluralism. The co-chairs of that are Valeria Sinclair Chapman and Dino Christensen. And in that call, if you will see it on APSA's website, promoting pluralism starts with recognizing that we're in the midst of political, economic, and social upheaval that portends significant transformations across the globe. The answers to what the global shifts mean for governments, nations, communities, and individuals are not straightforward or obvious, and the tools necessary to examine them are varied and expansive. Importantly, we recognize that the diversity of our scholars in terms of racial and ethnic background, nationality, gender, sexuality, and gender expression all contribute to the knowledge and ways of understanding the world, and thus the theme is pluralism and promoting pluralism. I also urge you to get involved with the very active American Political Science Association's Task Force on Election Assistance. That is co-chaired by David Lublin and Leanne Banaszak that you can reach out to, but also want to draw your attention to the subcommittee chaired by Darren Davis on drawing attention to racial disparities and disenfranchisement. So without further ado, I'll turn it back to President Franklin.
Greetings, hope you're doing well. Let me make sure I got this together right here. Greetings. My name is Sekou Franklin, and I'm the president of the National Conference of Black Political Scientists. And as an NCOBPS tradition, I want to recognize our ancestors, our elders, and those who have lost loved ones due to COVID-19 and police violence. The National Conference of Black Political Scientists, also known as NCOBPS, is happy to partner with the American Political Science Association, also known as APSA. And I want to give special thanks to President Janet Box-Steffensmeier, Kim Mealy, Jasmine Scott, and Karima Scott for assisting in this effort. And I also want to give recognition to Alexis Harris, a Clark Atlanta University graduate who did our graphic design. I want to give special thanks to our organizing committee for putting on this very important town hall, and it is spearheaded by this organizing committee. Kalila Brown Dean, Pearl Ford Dow, Tiffany Willoughby-Herard, who is also the vice president of NCOBPS. And I want to give special thanks to Cherie Wallace and Wendy Smooth, both of whom went beyond the call of duty in spearheading this town hall, and really the initial conversations that led to today's dialogue. And Dr. Wendy Smooth pulled together a group of 40 African-American women to begin talking about election and the 2020 election cycle. And this is how the dialogue emerged. Finally, I want to acknowledge my executive council members who are in the audience, and any past presidents viewing this town hall. We have two past presidents that are involved in this event, Todd Shaw, who's a panelist, and Wendy Smooth. Since NCOBPS was founded in 1969, we have been at the forefront of synthesizing research, mentorship, and activism. And doing this while uniting faculty and students from historically Black colleges and universities, and non-HBCUs, or what some may refer to as mainstream universities. Many of our members produce outstanding research, but also work on the front lines of liberation struggles, resistance movements, criminal justice reform, electoral justice, police accountability, voting rights, transnational politics, and Pan-Africanism, and many are advancing important policy interventions. Some refer to this as scholar activism, others refer to this as quote unquote engaged scholarship. But I think the best way to describe this approach is to assert that NCOBPS has always walked in alignment and hand in glove with communities of struggle, who, to reference theologian Howard Thurman, stand with their backs against the wall. And this is the space in which I believe this town hall emerges. Scholars who are making the connections between their research and the daily struggles of everyday people and everyday Black people whose life circumstances will be impacted by the outcome of the 2020 election. And without a doubt, this is a critical moment in the nation's history, and racial justice, as much as anything, is on the ballot. In addition to the presidential and congressional elections, the outcome will determine thousands of rules and regulations by the federal, administered by the federal agencies. The outcome of this election will determine judgeships, U.S. attorneys, and state legislative races, which will determine the next round of redistricting. All of these issues intersect with race and justice and life outcomes of the most disaffected groups in the United States. So I want to thank you today for joining this town hall. I want to thank our moderators, our panelists, and our audience for joining this discussion, and encourage everyone not just to get out and vote, but to center electoral justice at the center of this election. And finally, please go to our website, www.ncopps.org. Also, submit a paper to our annual conference. It'll be a virtual conference in March. I have your email, so I'll email everyone a reminder of this. Next, I'll introduce our Vice President, Tiffany Willoughby-Herard.
Thank you so much, Dr. Franklin. My task, along with that of Wendy Smooth, a professor at The Ohio State University, is to introduce our esteemed panelists. I'll begin with Dr. Pearl K. Ford Dowd, who is the Asa Griggs Candler Professor of Political Science and African American Studies at Emory University. Dow's most recent research focuses on African American women's political ambition and public leadership. Her published writing includes co-authorship of Remaking the Democratic Party, Lyndon B. Johnson as Native Son Presidential Candidate, and editorship of African Americans in Georgia, a reflection of politics and policy, reflection in the New South. She has published numerous articles and book chapters that have appeared in the Journal of African American Studies, Political Psychology, Presidential Studies Quarterly, Journal of Black Studies, and Social Science Quarterly. Prior to her named professorship at Emory University, Dow had a distinguished career at the University of Arkansas, where she was recognized for her commitments to diversity and students with numerous awards, including the Arkansas Greek Life's Order of Omega Faculty of the Year Award. Raised in Georgia, Dow is a graduate of Savannah State University and holds an MA in political science from Georgia Southern University and a PhD in political science from Howard University. Our second speaker is Dr. Lori Frazier, an associate professor of political science and African American studies at the University of California, Los Angeles. She serves as department vice chair for graduate studies in political science, as well as acting director of the Ralph J. Bunche Center for African American Studies. Her research interests include racial ethnic political behavior, African American politics, women in politics, immigrant political incorporation, and state and local politics. In 2015, she became the first African American female and the first woman of color to earn tenure and promotion in the political science department at UCLA. Her book, Racial and Ethnic Politics in American Suburbs, is the 2016 winner of 2 National Book Awards by the American Political Science Association, including the Best Book About Race Relations in the United States from the Race, Ethnicity, and Politics section, and the Dennis Judd Best Book Award in Urban and Local Politics. She examines international and domestic migration to American suburbs and the responsiveness of state and local institutions to the political and policy concerns of immigrant and ethnic minority groups. Since 2008, she has served as co-principal investigator of the Collaborative Multiracial Post-Election Survey, CMPS, the first multiracial, ethnic, multilingual post-election study of political preferences behavior among registered voters in the United States. CMPS queried more than 105 people in pardon me, that number is not correct. CMPS has queried people in 5 languages: English, Spanish, Chinese, Korean, and Vietnamese. And the 2020 CMPS will survey more than 20,000 adults as a youth sample aged 16 to 17. Kanisha N. Grant, associate professor at Howard University, has research interests including American political parties, American political development, and subnational politics. Her first book, The Great Migration and the Democratic Party, Black Voters and the Realignment of American Politics in the 20th Century, describes how Black migration to northern cities reshaped those political environments. Kanisha has a passion for education and politics that was born out of her early experiences growing up in South Florida. Raised by a single mother, Kanisha quickly learned that getting an education is an incredible part of the political process and would be keys to a better life for herself and her community. A first-generation college graduate, Kanisha earned a bachelor's in political science and a master's in public administration at Florida A&M University. While completing her PhD at Syracuse University's program in public administration, she also served as an assistant to the Civil Rights Commission of the United States. Our final presenter today is Dr. Todd Shaw, a distinguished associate professor at the University of South Carolina, who has been the chair of political science and is the associate director of African American Studies. His 2009 Duke University Press book, Now is the Time: Detroit Black Politics and Grassroots Activism, explores the political, sociological, and ideological ramifications of changes in the post-civil rights movement African American community. Specifically, he is very interested in how class, gender, age, and other social factors create differing definitions of what constitutes African American group interests, and how groups of African Americans and their allies have acted upon these perceived interests. His ongoing project with Dr. Kirk Foster from USC and Dr. Barbara Combs from University of Mississippi explores how and whether African American group identity is becoming distant from neighborhood attachments, and what would such a development mean relative to investments in social capital and local political participation in the city of Atlanta and elsewhere. He also is a co-author of a textbook entitled Uneven Roads: Introduction to U.S. Racial and Ethnic Politics. He is, in addition to having been a past president of the National Conference of Black Political Scientists, also has been a member of the Executive Council of the Southern Political Science Association. Please join me in welcoming all of our esteemed presenters today. And we will begin with Dr. Ford Dow.